From Toronto to Tokyo, and from Thonia to Syrinx, this is The Basement, your companion to the Ready Player One novel. Join our hosts each episode for complete chapter breakdowns and deep dives into the pop culture references through a series of challenges and homework assignments. The Basement is the Ready Player One podcast for people who love things. And now, please welcome Albert and the rest of the Gunchers for this week's episode. Hello, Gunchers, Sixers, Posers, and everyone else. My name is Albert Padilla, and welcome back to The Basement podcast. This is the Ready Player One podcast for people who love things. And tonight, we continue our diatribe, plunge, foray, crusade at bringing down Chapter 6 of the Ready Player One novel in an episode that we're calling Make It So. So we're going to obviously spend some time talking about Star Trek. In fact, we're anchoring the show tonight on The Next Generation. And to help me do that is someone that you all are very familiar with now. He's an avid Trekker or Trekkie. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of what those two mean later. And the only person I know that can give Deanna Troi a run for her money in those one-piece jumpsuit things that they wear. Please welcome back to the show the host of Bad Gamers Anonymous, Lieutenant Commander Crowley.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And I would like those pictures back of me in that one piece.
How about the rank? Did I get the rank right? I wasn't sure what to give you. I gave you Lieutenant Commander, which I thought was pretty flattering considering everyone was Lieutenant Commander on the show.
Everybody was Lieutenant Commander on the show. I have cosplayed before as Commander William T. Riker from the Starship Enterprise, but I'm okay with Lieutenant Commander. Data was a Lieutenant Commander, so.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to just tell you right now, and I'm sure you've heard this before. You look like him.
Thank you.
Like Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah.
Have you heard this before?
Yes, Jonathan Frakes. Yes, actually, it's interesting. Jonathan Frakes directed an episode of Castle on ABC a few years ago, and he did a quick cameo. And I looked at him and I went, "That looks like my dad." And my wife went, "Holy cow, that does look like your dad." So I guess that's what I have to look forward to in my old age.
Yeah. That's not a bad thing.
No, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I don't. I'm still trying to figure out who I'm going to age like. It's no one nice looking. So
as long as it's not Steve Perry, I think you're okay.
Hey, don't blow the show. We're about to talk about him in just a few minutes here.
Sorry.
All right. So we've just got one quick thing of news, and we'll jump right into Chapter 6 and kind of go from there. But as some of you guys know, this show really started on the heels of the Cantina Cast, where I kind of cut my teeth initially in this little podcast realm that we've got. And as Mike Rondo, who was the kind of the main show host of the Cantina Cast prior to him leaving earlier this year, decided that he's always had this big plan to kind of put together a podcast network. And since just in the last 2 weeks, that has officially been stood up. And so what the Basement is now under is a podcast network called Ear Glue Media. So we're very excited to be there. I don't know that anything changes since we were already doing this pretty much with the Cantina Cast and the Basement. As you guys know, Mike does produce the show, so he edits and does all the fancy stuff to make us sound a lot better than we really are. And but I guess we would be remiss in not mentioning that Bad Gamers Anonymous, your show, is now part of the podcast family. So welcome once again, Crowley, to joining this little ragtag group of podcasters that we've got together now.
Thank you. We just had Jonesy on an episode that will probably launch about the same time this one launches. And that was our 50th episode. And we announced that we were part of the Ear Glue Media Network. And, it's like Jonesy said, it's a big family. Like you said, it's ragtag. And we're just humbled and honored that we're a part of it. And it's fun to be a part of something that's bigger than what you were. So,
yeah, for sure. And I put myself in that same category as well. So we've got, it's again, not a whole lot's changing for at least for this show and all that. We may have some new, maybe a little intro and change some bumpers and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, we're going to continue to do what we do. Mike's going to continue to produce a really good show here for us. And who knows, we may be adding some additional shows later. So definitely, if you get a chance to, once we have the website up and we're promoting all of them, check out the other shows. We're trying to really stay close and in both quality and content, and have characters and people on that you guys really enjoy listening to. So it should be a lot of fun. Personally, I know I'm excited, and Crowley, I know you and I have spoken about it. You're excited as well. So.
Very much so.
All right. Well, that's the news. Outside of that, not a whole lot going on. We're going to continue chapter 6. And again, this is part 2 of 6 pieces, I guess, of this chapter. And really at this point, it's just all about the Halliday's journal. And we're really getting into all of the things that Halliday likes. Wade's kind of going through, and he's just rattling off different authors and directors, TV shows, cartoons, you name it. He's rattling these things off. And we went, just to recap, or I guess to remind the listeners, we originally started, I was going to break these all out and do one show on nothing but authors, and then another show about all the movies, and then the show about the directors. And instead, I figured it'd be easier and probably much more enjoyable and pleasant to listen to if I just spread all of that out over the course of maybe a number of episodes. And so that's what you're hearing. We're kind of picking and choosing different topics from that chapter, kind of lumping them all together. And by the time we're done, we'll have chapter 6 complete. So we're going to start off with the authors. And there's 3 authors that are kind of thrown at us that we picked for this show. Neal Stephenson, Alfred Bester, and William Gibson. And we'll start with Neal Stephenson. We're not going to get into the authors too much because these guys did a ton of stuff. And you could really just do a whole show probably on some of these authors and the number of novels that they cranked out. But let's talk about Neal Stephenson. He was born 1959. He's still around, still putting out cyberpunk, post-cyberpunk, and whatever maximalism is. Any idea what that is?
I have no idea. I've never heard of that until this show.
Okay, great. But that's another genre of book that he writes. I guess maybe his most notable book is Anthem, but the one that stood out to me was a book called Read Me. And it's really kind of a play on the README files that we find, in video games or software that you open up in TechSpace, and there's all kinds of notes in there. But it's interesting. It's a thriller that's kind of set in the present, and it focuses on a bunch of developers who make this MMO, and they kind of get caught up with like Islamic terrorists and the Russian mafia. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but the fact that it was an MMO and, it had those kind of angles to it seems intriguing enough. I actually may go pick this up and read it. Maybe if I do, I'll come back and kind of just give you a 60-second elevator speech on how it goes. But one of the more important or interesting things about Neal Stephenson was the fact that he was working with Jeff Bezos at Blue Origin, which was that whole company he started up for like space exploration. Are you familiar with either, I guess, that Blue Origin thing that he did a number of years ago?
I'm not even a little.
Yeah, it was, well, and every billionaire was kind of jumping on the bandwagon here back then, and they were starting up their own things. I don't know to what extent he was doing there. Maybe I don't know if he was like a consultant or he was one of these guys that was just kind of pie in the sky, tuna fish and mayonnaise. Let me kind of come up with some ideas, see what we can do kind of thing. He's no longer part of that project for whatever reason, but interesting that they kind of pulled him in there. Alfred Bester is the second author. He did a book called The Demolished Man, which before we came on, we were talking about this. That is not to be confused with Demolition Man, the Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone movie.
Which is, by the way, that's the greatest utopia you ever want to live in, because Taco Bell won.
It's every restaurant.
Yeah, it is. It won. Yeah. It won the fast food war, and Taco Bell, as we all know, is the greatest fast food that has ever been known to man.
I'm not going to debate that. Although in Texas we have Whataburger, which I would kind of pit up against them.
Whataburger totally is delicious.
Oh, do you guys have those?
No, we don't. But I have family in Texas, and we visit from time to time. And
nice.
Yeah, I love Whataburger.
Yeah, we love you, Whataburger. So, shameless plug. Interesting enough, The Demolished Man. So that was came out in 1953. That actually is the first novel to ever win the Hugo Award. So prior to that, they had obviously never announced it. Although they did a retro award for a few years before that, later down the road. But this was the first book that ever won that particular award. And it's a very interesting kind of book. You can go and look at some of the people that have written reviews about it, and it's pretty one-sided in terms of talking about how amazing this book is. And it's a tale about, it takes place in the future where everyone has telepathic abilities now. And the main character is this guy named Ben Reich, who's this high-powered businessman who goes and murders one of his rival businessmen, and then he's kind of on the run throughout the book. And I guess the pull is the fact that since everyone has telepathic powers, if you're a criminal, how do you run away from anyone that can read your thoughts, read your minds, that kind of thing? So it was sounds a pretty, again, another really intriguing novel. If you guys are looking to pick up anything or maybe see where Ernie got some of the influences, that's probably one of the more, not necessarily the psychopathic or the telepathic piece of it, but the future-ish dystopian kind of environments are probably played out there. Did you ever watch Babylon 5?
I did. I watched Babylon 5 he was on there, wasn't he?
So there was I don't know if he was on there, but there was a group, and I did not watch Babylon 5, so I'm way out of my element here, so just bail me out if I die here. But there was a group called the Psi Corps in Babylon 5.
Yes.
And they were led by somebody named Alfred Bester.
That is correct. That's where I thought I got confused. That I thought he was in there, but that was the character.
The character was named after the author of this particular novel. So, yeah, cool. We connected those two dots. And then the last one is William Gibson. Okay, so William Gibson, he was born in 1948. He's still writing books. And just a real and very quick story. One of my really closest friends down in San Antonio, who really turned me on to a lot of the stuff that I talk about, that we talk about in the show, and that Ernie Klein honestly has in the novel. He was one of the ones. His name's Mike Minter. He actually had one day long ago came to me and said, "Hey, you got to pick up this book called Neuromancer," and he just went on and on about how amazing it was. I have yet to read this book. I don't know why I haven't read it. Again, it's another one of those novels where you just keep saying, "Oh yeah, I'll read it," and you never get around to it. But that particular book came out in 1984, and it's kind of like this cyberpunk type novel. And interesting enough, he was writing that book prior to Blade Runner coming out. And when Gibson saw the movie Blade Runner, he thought he was about a third of the way through writing the novel, and he thought, "That's it, I'm done. No one's gonna pick this book up. Everyone's going to think I completely plagiarized the book because they have very similar kind of threads and plot lines and that kind of thing." But it's very similar to Blade Runner. So if you're a fan of Blade Runner, the movie 1982's Blade Runner, or even the sequel really from I think 2016, if you're a fan of either one of those, this is probably a book that's right up your alley. Now this one did win the Nebula, it won the Hugo, and it won the Phillip K Award. So it's pretty much won all of those that you can, the really big ones with regards to like science fiction. All right, so I'm going to ask you, Neuromancer or anything from Gibson, did you pick up anything? Have you read anything from them?
Here's the thing, and I sound bad saying this. I'd rather watch my sci-fi than read my sci-fi. No,
and there's something to say about that. I get it, especially with sci-fi. It's not like, murder mystery kind of thing, right?
Right. Like I can sit down and I can read, like I read Ready Player One in 17 hours. And it was really good and I enjoyed it. But I don't actively seek out these types of authors. I don't actively seek out these types of books. The books that I like to read are political, philosophical, religious in nature. I would rather sit down, turn my brain off, or be pleasantly surprised and have my brain engaged in a sci-fi.
No, I think that's fair, especially nowadays. Like we're so far in as good as the special effects are, it's almost easier sometimes to just sit back, turn your brain off, and let them tell you the story and visually tell you the story, that kind of thing. I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe it is just the special effects, because back in our day, Albert, special effects weren't very special.
Yeah, Clash of the Titans. I'm looking at you.
Right. So anymore, you can sit down and you can watch Star Wars, you can watch Star Trek, you can watch all these things on TV that aren't necessarily, movies, and be blown away by the special effects. So
or Tron, like the special effects in Tron, right?
What did I just say about not so special effects?
Sorry, I remember how much you loved, and I'm doing air quotes, Tron, so I thought I had to throw that in there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on from the novels, and I want to jump right into the music, because we have two great bands to talk about, and I've been listening to these guys for, my whole life, really, both bands, but more recently in the last 2-3 weeks, it's been nonstop Def Leppard and nonstop Journey. I've been posting things in our Discord channel for both of those. I think I posted most recently, what did I do? Was it the Journey video for Worlds Apart?
Yes.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right, well, hold on. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's start with Def Leppard, though. So Def Leppard, is there another band, that was at least at their height, like in the mid to late 80s, can you think of another band that was is bigger than they were at that point?
Motley Crue.
Okay, maybe.
I mean, if you're talking, because Def Leppard is most decidedly a hair band, right?
Yeah, I would put them in that category.
Motley Crue.
Yeah, but they were huge, and no, you're right, because
they were bigger in Europe, in the UK than they were here.
Yeah,
they never got, like, Scorpions never got to their level.
No,
but they were.
Oh, and maybe in Russia, or wherever they're
Germany.
From. Germany?
Yeah.
Was it Germany?
I think it's Germany. Didn't they do the song when the wall? It doesn't matter. That they're not Def Leppard.
Right.
Their drummer has 2 arms.
Oh, come on. Okay. So I got another story. So I got a guy named buddy of mine named Kemp Ryan, and he was a drummer at one point, but we would have these arguments about whether or not he was a true drummer, because his drum set allowed him to play and do most things with his feet rather than using his hands. In his mind, the drummer had to have 2 arms, and I'm not picking on anybody who doesn't have both arms. That's not what this is about. But is he any less of a drummer for only having 1 arm?
As somebody who plays bass and thus knows percussion, that's the most ridiculous argument that I've ever heard. Here's the thing. I think it's more fantastic and more of a feat that he had to relearn once he lost his arm. For those of you that don't know, he lost it in a car accident. It's
Rick Allen is who we're talking about too. Sorry, I didn't even say his name. Yeah. Rick Allen is the drummer.
He lost it in a car accident. So, and this was after they got big. Like, it was right as they were, I think it was after their first album dropped in the US.
I think it was after Pyromania.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And he lost his arm. He had to relearn how to play with 1 arm and 2 feet.
Yeah.
And to me, that's amazing, especially to go all those years, 20 some years, creating, being this basically a master musician at his craft, right? Like, one of the best drummers, and have a limb taken away that is so important to what you're doing, and then relearning. I think that's a ridiculous argument, and it speaks to his sheer force of will to be able to relearn how to do that and to do it at, again, a master level.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was always defending this guy, honestly. I was always saying, no, he's a drummer. He uses both feet and only 1 arm, but what's the definition of a drummer? Somebody plays the drums.
Right.
Done. That's what he's doing. Yeah. So anyways, that was always a fun little argument. And to his credit, again, like you said, he does some pretty amazing stuff. I mean, he's not where he was, and he'll never, obviously never be like Neil Peart or some of these other great drummers that we've had in our lifetimes. But I mean, you listen to some of those tracks, and yeah, man, he's doing the same, if not better, than he was on the Pyromania stuff. So
I would say he may have reinvented drumming, because of all the things that he had to do with his feet. And then you fast forward just, I don't know, a couple of years, and you see all these other drummers doing the double bass drum.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I am certainly no musical history expert, but I think there's something to be said about what he accomplished and what he has contributed to music overall.
And we just kind of jumped in feet first with this one. But so Def Leppard, if you don't know, is an 80s rock band out of England, Sheffield to be exact. They started in 1977, and they really kind of blew up here in the U.S. at least. They were, it's a tale of two cities, or across the pond. They were, had their own kind of fame and glory out there. But for the U.S., they really hit it off here with the Pyromania album. They, had the accident, and then there was this long wait. We knew they were coming back in the early 80s, and they finally did come back around, I guess it would have been the mid 80s at that point, when the Hysteria album came out. And that was just, get out of here. That was the biggest thing at the time. And it was always on MTV. Every video they came out was always preluded with several announcements, days, weeks in advance. Hey, we've got a new song coming, new track coming. And to their credit, that album is just amazing. Every one of those songs is really good. And it can be, it's every, I guess strippers' dream to dance, to pour some sugar on me. I've never been, and being completely honest, I've never been, but that's the running joke, that particular song is the one that, these women are dancing to. But it's a great song, Pour Some Sugar on Me. There's some other tracks, but let's just go there. What are some of your favorite songs from Def Leppard? What did you like Def Leppard? I guess I never even asked you that. Did you like
Well, I think everybody liked Def Leppard, right? They were the alternative, at least, friends of mine, they were the alternative to Motley Crue. I didn't hate them until later on when I found Metallica, and I was like, this isn't real metal. Give me real metal.
Yeah.
But they were good. I liked, obviously, Pour Some Sugar on Me. Everybody liked that. The other one that sticks out in my mind, just because being an angsty teenager, Love Bites.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that was everybody had a like their love ballad or their rock ballad or their hair ballad, whatever you want to call it. That was theirs. And I just remember, my girlfriend at the time, in junior high school dumps you. What do? You throw that tape in and
throw Love Bites in.
Love Bites, and you just, kind of rock out to that until you feel better.
They had a big influence on me growing up in the 80s. Like Joe Elliott, the lead singer, in some of these videos, I think especially in Woman, if I'm not mistaken, he had like the Woman t-shirt with the comic book. That was kind of the theme for this album. They had some art that was done for the record that was drawn in a comic book form. I remember getting that shirt, and I remember immediately cutting the sleeves off of it like he had in the video.
Right.
And this is also around the same time that I started ripping my jeans up intentionally. Like there was methods in which you would rip the front of your denim up so that you could get this kind of look. And I just looked homeless. But, in my mind, I looked exactly like him, especially with that Woman or the t-shirt, the Hysteria t-shirt that I was wearing. Did you do the rip denim thing? Did you have that look going on at any point?
Oh, no, absolutely not. So
Mom would have killed you?
Yeah. So we didn't have a lot of money all the time growing up. So no, you don't rip your pants. That's a waste of money there. Here's the thing. Here's what I remember about Def Leppard the most. So when I growing up between the ages of 0 and 15, I wasn't really allowed to listen to a whole lot of my, music that I would want to listen to. Yeah. I'd have to sneak it. You'd go in your room, you'd put your headphones on, and you'd listen to what you want to listen to and hope that mom and dad don't come in and need something.
Wow.
So when I turned 16, it was, well, you're driving now, so you're going to listen to whatever you want. You can go buy whatever CDs you want and listen to whatever you want, but it has to be eclectic. You can't just buy one type of music. I mean, my parents were trying to be smart about it, right?
Yeah.
It didn't really work out. So I went and I bought, I hate to say this on a podcast because I know how much crap I'm going to get.
Oh, it's going to come back and
Discord.
burn you later.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Billy Ray Cyrus's Achy Breaky Heart album. Good God. And then I bought Adrenalize, the Def Leppard Adrenalize, and then I bought Metallica's Black Album. Out of all three of those albums, the only one that ever got listened to was the Black Album. Just FYI. But my parents were like, oh, well, look, he's got country, he's got Def Leppard. I don't even know what Def Leppard is, but he's got that. This Metallica, what is this?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it.
Well, honestly, I could end the show right there. Good night, everybody. You didn't have to admit that. I really appreciate you did that, though.
Hey, anything for you, man.
Anything for the show.
That's right.
Anything for the show. All right. So Def Leppard, I guess I would have to say, I struggled because I'd asked the question about what our favorite albums were. And really, as much as I like the Hysteria album, I'm actually going to go with Pyromania as the one that was always my favorite.
Really?
Because this was because I was really, I was into rock, definitely. I was listening to Kiss at age like 4 or 5. So I was really into rock.
Kids in Satan's Service? You were listening to that?
Yeah, I was all about the Kiss Army, man.
Right.
Trust me. We'll get to them at some point. I don't know how to work them in because I don't think they were explicitly mentioned in the novel, but I'll figure out a way. There's got to be a way to work them in here.
Attaboy.
But yeah, so the Pyromania, when that album came out, I just really dug it. Like it was fresh, and there was that one and a couple other ones that were just kind of in my normal rotation for rock albums. And really, to be fair, I didn't have this album. This was something that my older cousin had. One, he had a job. Two, his mom, kind of like your mom, his mom would let him listen to this stuff.
Right.
And so when mom wasn't, and we were living with him at the time, so when they weren't away, I could go in there and he would, let me listen to it. And as soon as parents came home, whatever else, I had to run out of the room because we were listening to that. Iron Maiden, listening to Number of the Beast. I was Catholic mom was ready just to slay me if she had found out I was listening to that.
I am right there with you. I know that feeling.
Yeah, but this is one of the ones that I remember I was kind of, again, maybe like you, sneaking in to listen to. So,
Did you ever get busted? Did you ever get busted?
Yeah, I did.
Do you remember
a
what
few times.
song it was you were? Because I only got busted once, and I remember the song that I got busted to.
I got busted for Ancient Rhyme of the Mariner in the Power Slave album.
You win.
And I'm like, it's not even like satanic or anything. Why are you getting so mad about this? You don't have no idea what I've listened to already.
Right? I got
Diary of a Madman by
Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah. Have you seen that cover, Mom?
Yeah. He talks about suicide, Mom. No, I got busted to Danger Zone.
By Kenny Loggins?
Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it was a different time.
Yeah.
It was a different time.
Your parents weren't the parents from Footloose, were they?
Well, they were until I was about 16, and they went, well, nothing we could do now.
Yeah. Gotcha. Did you ever see them in concert? That was the other question I had.
I didn't. But speaking of Ozzy Osbourne, that was my very first concert, was Ozzy Osbourne at the Mark of the Quad Cities back in the mid 90s. And that was the last time. That was the first concert they ever had. And that was the last time they ever asked Ozzy to come.
Yep.
He told everybody, screw security. Everybody come to the front. And I had fourth row tickets. I got pushed back to the very back row.
Oh, wow.
And there was a lot of damage done. And they said Ozzy Osbourne will never be welcome back there again. So,
but he wasn't. So I grew up in San Antonio where he had peed on the Alamo. And there was a long, I don't even know, maybe 20 years.
Well, at least he didn't bite
San Antonio.
Bat's head off.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Well, from Def Leppard, we're going to go to Journey next. And
man, we should have started with Journey first.
Full disclosure, Journey is one of my favorite bands all time. Like, I was all into Journey. I've always been into Journey. I've seen them in concert several times, not many, but several.
Several times.
Wow. And when Glee was out and they did their version.
Oh, good God.
Oh, yeah, I was all over that.
All right. Well,
so go easy on me. No, you don't have to.
Look, I'll tell you what. It's better than Oingo Boingo or Duran Duran. Not by a lot, but it's still better.
All right, so Journey. Gosh, where to begin?
Where do we have to?
Yeah,
okay.
We have to.
Right.
That's part of what we're doing.
All right.
So the first question I had, Steve Perry, is he God's gift to music?
No.
All right, I'm gonna just. Why not?
Well, look, Journey has its place in musical history, and I think when I think of Journey, man, I'm gonna regret saying this too. I think of them in the same terms that I think of the Beatles. I don't like the Beatles, but I kind of respect where they were at in musical history. And they were part of a very strange and wondrous time in music, and they made it work. And they are regarded by some, like you, as one of the best bands ever. And I can understand that. I will turn the channel whenever their music comes on, but that doesn't mean that I don't respect them as artists. But I don't respect them as artists.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
I'm not hurting my feelings. I just, everything about them growing up is, and most of it maybe just tied to the fact that it was, again, more childhood memories and that kind of thing. I get all that. But I really do like his voice. Like, Steve Perry's voice is, to me, one of the better. He's just got great tone. It's very clear. Sometimes I pretend he's singing to me, and really enjoy
him. You have
He's got
man crush on this guy.
No, I think he's great. He's got a new album out. In fact, it's coming out. He's got
sorry to hear that.
one song, and we're recording this on August 25th, 2018. So if you get it, I think there's one song already that you can listen to, and I forget the name of it now, but he's got and this would be his third, I think, solo album that he's done. So pretty excited about that. But for those of you that don't know, so Journey is arguably one of the larger bands that came out in the late 70s. Really hit their stride in the early 80s. They were out of San Francisco, and initially Steve Perry wasn't a part of the band. He didn't come in until the second or third album. And from, when he came in, it kind of, the whole dynamic of the band just kind of changed in terms of the sound and structure and all of that. But did you have any favorite songs from them? Favorite albums at all?
Yeah, I did. The ones that I didn't listen to. Here's the thing about Journey. So, like you said, really big late 70s, early 80s. They kind of ushered in a very weird, strange way, hair metal. Like,
yeah, I can see that.
They're kind of like the grandfather of that. And I hate saying that because it's not like they were super old when hair metal kind of hit the scene. But they kind of, and you're right. Steve Perry's got a great voice. Like he's got range. If anybody's ever tried to sing Steve Perry at karaoke on a drunken bender, you know that guy's got range.
Yeah.
So I don't have a favorite song. I don't have a favorite album. Everybody knows what's the title of the song? Worlds Apart. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody knows that. That's what gets sung at karaoke nights.
Their biggest album, their biggest song is really probably "Don't Stop Believing."
I guess. Whatever. I know the song. This is the sad thing about it. You say these songs, I'm like, yeah, I know that song. I wish I didn't, but I do. They're that iconic band. So you got to give them props.
Yeah. And "Don't Stop Believing" is probably the biggest song they've done. The Worlds Apart song is amazing too. I guess it was on yours. Yeah, it was when I came on Bad Gamers Anonymous, and we did the top, top 10 retro games, our personal list.
Yep.
And I had number 10 at Journey, the video game.
I still don't know why you had it at number 10.
Well, because I like them. That's why I'm making the case right here. They're a big influence for me. But for those of you that don't know, there was actually an arcade game that was about the band. And the way the game played out was you were the band members, you played all the band members, and you were on these different missions trying to get their musical instruments. And when you were able to collect all the musical instruments, and for Steve Perry, you had to get his microphone. But once you collected all their instruments, it would then cut to a band playing, like them playing on stage. And inside the cabinets, there was a tape, an actual like cassette tape. So when you got to that moment, it had these speakers up on top. And you didn't do anything but just sit back, and you got this like 60-second Journey concert. And while that was going, you got to hear Worlds Apart, Separate Ways. That kind of was playing in the background. And the only thing you could do in there, well, I should say you could sit back and watch it, but the only thing you had to do in order for that to continue to play and for you to listen to the song is you got to play the bouncer. And so the fans, you had these little animated fans that would try to rush the stage, and you had to move and block them as that stage bouncer so they couldn't get to the band on stage there. Is that not exciting or what?
Yeah, no, you were right. It's not exciting.
It was a great game. I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, you made the case for it on Bad Gamers Anonymous, and it was a great concept, just poor execution.
No, trust me, that game doesn't make any top 10 like favorite list of any type. I get it. It was more of a haha kind of thing, but I actually really did like the game. So, ever see these guys in concert?
Thankfully, no.
No.
Can we talk about their music videos?
Yeah, which one do you want to talk about?
They're all awful.
You're kidding me. They've got great costumes.
No, okay, they're not costumes. It's just what people wore during that time period.
Yeah.
It's just terrible.
That video was pretty bad. The concept was like someone said, okay, we got it. You all are going to come out on stage and you're going to pretend like you have instruments.
Right.
And you really need to play up the movements and the motions so that we know what instrument you're playing.
And what was with the chick? She stood there emotionless.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I guess they were all after her or something. I don't know. It was a weird time.
I don't know. It was a weird time. It was a very strange and weird, wondrous time in music.
I've seen these guys a few times.
Of course you have.
I've never, but to be fair, I've never seen the original. I've always seen with Arnold Pernew. I can't say his last name. But so they got this guy that came out maybe about, let's see, what year are we in? So I guess it's been about 10 years now-ish. So there was a gentleman that was performing in a kind of an 80s cover band out in the Philippines, and they were looking for a lead singer, they being the Journey band, since Steve Perry left the band after, some fights and all that, whatever, arguing. He's been gone from the band for a number of years. But they found this guy on YouTube. And if you close your eyes, he sounds exactly like Steve Perry. And so they brought him in, they auditioned him, and didn't really speak a whole lot of English. And to this day, he is the lead singer for Journey. And if you, again, close your eyes, listen to that, you can go out on YouTube, watch some of these videos. It's impeccable in terms of how he sounds. He sounds exactly like him. So I've been fortunate to see them 4 times, I think, since, he joined the band.
Fortunate.
Fortunate. To see them play. I think one of them was with Fleetwood Mac, which was really a great concert.
I'd rather see Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah. Well, actually, Fleetwood Mac opened up for Journey. What does that tell you there?
That's terrible. Let me. Can I ask you, Journey or Def Leppard?
Oh, Journey. There's none. Not even a question.
All right. Journey or Oingo Boingo?
Journey.
All right. Well, that's at least acceptable. Journey or Duran Duran? Wow.
Journey.
Okay.
No, I had a moment of weakness, but no.
All right.
I'm going to go with Journey.
All right. Well, the last two are acceptable. The first one, not. I'm confused on, but that's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move on from Journey and let's get into movies. So I've got Better Off Dead, a little movie called Better Off Dead, came out in 1985, written and directed by Savage Steve Holland. It stars John Cusack as Lane Meyer, David Augenstairs as the father, Al Meyer, Kim Darby as his mom, Diane Franklin as Monique Junet, Dan Schneider as Ricky. I love that guy. And he was actually, you remember Head of the Class?
Yes.
It was a 1986 TV show.
Yes.
Yeah, he was Dennis in that.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
He's really good. And then, of course, the one and only Curtis Armstrong, who plays Charles DeMar.
Curtis Armstrong has been in a ton of stuff, not the least of which he played Metatron, the voice of God, in Supernatural for several seasons.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't really. Yeah, I had no. I've never seen the show, but I didn't even know he was involved with it, though.
Yeah, no, he was. He's in fact, I kind of stopped watching it. The first 5 seasons are the greatest seasons of any television show, period. But later on, he plays Metatron, and he does a really good job. I like the guy as an actor, and Better Off Dead. I've talked about this before when I've been on The Basement. Is that we would rent that VCR. This was one of those movies that was in our rotation, and when we actually bought a VCR every Friday night, Better Off Dead, Explorers. The other John Cusack movie with Demi Moore. Do you
One Crazy Summer.
Like those 3 were the movies that my brother and I would be like, we want to rent this. And my dad's like, you've seen it. Yep. We want to rent this. So
yeah, no, this is one of those, it's one of the better like movies that I remember of the 80s in this kind of genre, I guess, if you want to call it that. I really, really enjoyed this movie. In fact, I watch it pretty often. I would say, and I say often, like once a year somewhere, somehow. I'm up late at night. It's either on or I'm looking for it. I'll watch it. But for whatever reason, maybe just in preparation of the show, I had a great time watching it. I watched it with my wife. And I think she had only seen it like once, had vaguely remembered. She's a little bit younger than me, so some of this stuff is kind of all brand new to her. But she was cracking up. Like I think it still holds up really well. It's kind of corny. It's almost like a live action cartoon at times because there's he's an artist and we get these scenes where
it's a little
the art kind of comes to life.
Morbid, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Especially when he's trying to constantly kill himself.
Like there's 3 times in the movie, and the movie's only an hour and a half. So just on average, every 30 minutes, he's trying to kill himself.
Yeah.
As a teenager or even a tween, that can be a little disturbing. But again, you've talked about this on The Basement. The 80s were a different time. You can kind of get away with stuff then, but you certainly couldn't get away with now. Right. And I think this is one of those times. I mean, but they do it in a comic way that is very tongue in cheek. And I think every teenager can relate to that. My girlfriend dumped me. Life is over. I must end it.
Right. Yeah. We've been together 6 months.
6 months. That's all it was. Is 6
pulling
months.
The trigger right now.
Right. And he kept saying that over and over. 6 months. She just throws away 6 months like it's nothing.
Yeah, it is nothing, right? That's the joke. So the premise of this movie is you've got the main character played by John Cusack, Lane Meyer. He's been with this girl for 6 months and she's kind of like the pretty girl in high school. She dumps him and he is from that point on trying to win her back in a lot of different ways, and because she's now gone for the captain of the ski team. And along the way he meets a character, Diane Franklin's character, Monique Junet, who is a foreign exchange student from France, who's living across the street with some family or some, a mother and her son. And, they end up getting together and she's trying to kind of help him, I guess. And they end up falling in love. And, the movie ends with them being together and, all that. So it's pretty cliche. I mean, there's really nothing groundbreaking here in terms of the movie. But let's talk about Diane Franklin just for a second. So she was The Last American Virgin. That movie was another that I don't even know that to this day, I still have not told my mom that I've seen that movie. But she was in that. She was in Better Off Dead. And then she came back in like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. She was one of the princesses towards the end. Beautiful woman. And she's really not done There's other movies. Don't get me wrong. She's done other stuff, but nothing.
She was in Charles in Charge,
blockbusters.
man. She was in Charles in Charge for
That's a great
an episode
with Willie Ames.
Yes.
There's Curtis Armstrong. Let's talk about him real quick. We can talk about John Cusack if you want, but we'll probably save that for another time. But Curtis Armstrong is in that movie is great. But I got a question. Do you think he was better as Charles in this one, Charles DeMar, or Booger in Revenge of the Nerds?
Okay, so this movie has several moments that stood out to me for 30 years. And one of those is when he's on top of the mountain and because Lane needs to ski the K-12, right? Because this is a skiing movie. And if you don't ski it right, you're going to have a bad time. Mm-hmm. So he's up at the top of the mountain and Charles looks at him and he goes, "Do you realize the street value of the pure snow we're sitting on?" And then he snorts a line of it like it's Coke. And he goes, "I think I just froze the left side of my brain. Look, I can't move my right arm." It is one of the greatest cinematic movie moments of all time. It just is. And stuck with me for 30 years. He was hilarious when they're at the dance. And the guy who skis the K-12 like it's the bunny slopes, he comes up and he says something. He goes, "Hey, you guys make a cute couple. Just make sure you shave close for that goodnight kiss." And he just starts laughing just incessantly. And then 3 minutes later, they cut to a scene where he walks up to him and the girl and he's still laughing. He's going, "Shave really close." Like, it's just so over the top. That is great.
Yeah. No, he's got that. The one line that stuck for me for 30 years was where he's trying to give Lane advice. He's like, "Lane, I've been going to this school for 7.5 years. I'm no dummy."
I know high school.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Yeah. What other scenes you got there? I guess some of your favorite scenes.
I think the scene where when he's thinking back at where he met, I don't even remember her name, the girlfriend that dumped him after 6 months, when he meets her for the first time and she touches her nose and you hear his inner monologue. Oh God, she just touched her nose. Do I have something on my nose? So then he touches his nose to see. And then you hear her inner monologue. He touched his nose after I touched my nose. Oh God, do I have something on my nose? And it's just this back and forth. And it's like sitting there as a 42-year-old man going, "Man, I remember what that's like. I'm glad I'm not a teenager anymore."
Yeah, that's stressful.
It is.
Because all you're trying to do is make an impression. And you start wondering if you got crap on your nose.
Yeah, I think that when the mom pushes him off the steps when he's thinking about hanging himself and he's like, "I'm not going to do this. What am I doing? This is death. This is final." And then she opens the door to vacuum and pushes him off the step and he's just dangling there.
Yeah. I think one of his many suicide attempts.
Yeah. That and I always, and we talked about this at the beginning of the show. For me, these 80 movies trope of the second girl that you're not really interested in at the beginning is always hotter than the girl you were with at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Diane Franklin, she's still super hot on her IMDb page. Oh yeah. Yeah. She's still doing it for me.
Yeah. She's a gorgeous woman.
Absolutely.
So the interesting things about this movie, because it does kind of break. At one point, it breaks like that fourth barrier, the third wall, whatever that is, where they're kind of like looking at the audience to become self-aware. There's one moment in that. But on top of that, there's the intro is kind of like this cartoon, which is really weird if you think about it, because you're watching a movie and then it cuts into a cartoon. And it does this several times, like at least twice in the movie. And then there's another moment later on where Lane gets a job and he's working at the burger place. And it cuts over to Claymation, exactly. And the burger comes to life. We get Van Halen. Everybody wants some playing in the background.
That's such a great scene.
Yeah.
Where and then the boss walks in with the cigar and pushes him out and he's wearing the hat with the pig nose.
Yeah.
It's just great. But I always, as a kid, I got this movie confused with One Crazy Summer, because in that movie, he was an artist as well, wasn't he? And he was always drawing things.
No.
What? Wasn't there another movie? See, I'm still confused 30 years later.
No, he was Hoops in that movie.
Hoops.
He was the basketball.
Hoops.
He was like the failed basketball player.
Well, he's a failed something in every movie.
In every movie.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. That's kind of John Cusack. He's just got that Eeyore, like sad pathetic looking look on his face all the time that's, is charming in a very odd way.
Except for Grosse Point Blank, which is still one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, that's one of his better ones too. This movie also introduces us to the $2 kid, Johnny. So this was running gag in the movie the entire time, where they've got this paper boy who has been, shut out of $2 at some point in his career. And he's dressed in black. He looks like a thug. He's wearing like a black cap, all dressed in black completely. He's got another little running gag where as he throws the newspapers, he's blowing out the windows on the dad's garage and that kind of thing. But throughout the rest of the movie, there's just moments where he just pops up and he's like going after Lloyd, trying to collect $2. And Lloyd, I keep calling him Lloyd. Lane. Lane is completely scared by this kid. And today he's a meme. Like, I've seen him in memes all over the place. The more recent one, it was a picture of The Price is Right. And you could see the 3 contestants at the bottom. $2. And everyone had their amounts. And he had $2 written on his screen, which I thought was great. So I don't know who came up with that one, but kudos to you. Yeah, that was really well done too. I mean, as a kid, you see all these kids chasing this bigger teenager around, just yelling $2. It's I love that. There's some of my other, I guess, favorite quotes are G Ricky, I'm sorry your mom blew up. This is after Ricky's mom
drinks turpentine.
She's just chugging it down and she thinks it's liqueur. And then she goes and lights a cigarette at the dinner table and blows up. And she's alive, but for the rest of the movie, she's kind of bandaged up and her mouth is all,
they're speaking
off
the
to the
international language of love.
Yeah. And this guy, Ricky, he is just Dan Snyder. This is his worst, in terms of the way he looks. He is absolutely the epitome of like nerddom, geekiness. He's so disgusting.
Like, everybody as a kid wanted to be Lane, and most of us were Ricky.
Yeah, that's true. There's a great moment in there too where Monique is talking. She confesses. Spoiler alert. She comes across at the very beginning of the movie as though she doesn't speak any English, and we come to find out she actually does speak English. Speaks very good English, albeit with a French accent. And she's explaining how frustrated she is with Ricky, and she mentions that he's constantly putting his testicles all over her. And Lane is like, what? And she's like, yeah, testicles. And he's like, tentacles. Tentacles, totally different.
Right, she's like, octopus. And he's like, oh, yeah,
octopus,
tentacles.
Yeah,
not an S.
Not testicles.
The other thing that stood out, like, the mom in the movie couldn't cook for nothing.
Yeah, Lane's mom.
Right, Lane's mom. And she's like, I got this recipe out of this woman's magazine, but some of the pages stuck together because it got rained on. And so I just improvised. It has raisins in it. You like raisins. And then it's just like this goop, like with little raisins in it. And David Ogden Stiers, man, that guy is so good in everything he's in. He is the perfect straight man because he's talking to Lane about the car that sat in the driveway for 6 months. And then he just sees this goop fall on his plate and he just looks at his wife and just doesn't miss a beat and just continues with his line. He's just so good. I love David Ogden Stiers. Yeah, he's great. And then that meal, like, Lloyd's poking at it and it suddenly just like scurries off the table like it's alive, which is funny. What a great movie. If you haven't seen this movie, like, when this podcast is done, it's on YouTube for free. Go watch it. Yeah, the whole movie. Yeah, go watch it. It's brilliant. Someone did it. Brilliant. I guess the only other thing we probably should mention is the brother who picks up trashy women. Yeah, he's got a book on how to pick up trashy women that he orders, and he does. At one scene, Lane walks into the room and he's sitting there with like his Hugh Hefner smoking jacket on, and he's got all these like trashy women. They're like having a party. He cuts out the coupon or the coupons on the back of the cereal boxes, but then puts the cereal right back. So every time the cereal comes out, it just spills everywhere. David Ogden Stiers again just delivers that just so straight. He's the perfect. He just pulls them out one by one, and he's like, "Why is the cereal falling out of the boxes?" And then he likes to cut the coupons and send them in for the free stuff. He's like, "You can't wait until the cereal's done." And one of the things that he sends off for is like how to build a rocket with household items. And so the movie ends literally after everything's done and we've concluded and Lane and Monique are together and it's a happy ending, that kind of thing. It cuts back to the house
and the parents come out, and suddenly there's a rocket that's lifting off through the ceiling of the house and takes off into space. And so, again, it's the son who sent off for that book earlier. He's now built this rocket out of household parts and that kind of thing.
Just brilliantly done.
Yeah, the whole movie's great. At the very, very end, if you didn't catch it, if you wait to the very last part of the movie, the last thing the credits say is, the film's over, you can go now. So there's a little Easter egg for you to find next time you watch it.
You know what? Marvel should just do that.
Yeah, they probably should instead of doing what they do. Yep. But I think that's the only movie we really had to talk about in at least in this episode. It's again, it's one of my favorite ones. I'm with you there in terms of this one, One Crazy Summer. Those two are kind of just inseparable. Oh wait, we forgot the Korean drag racers.
Oh my dude, where he learned how to talk by watching Howard Cosell on the Wide World of Sports, and they're always drag racing. It's the greatest. Like, there are so many great moments in this movie that still 30 years later, like, I was laughing out loud. Like, I'm like, this movie's so good. Why haven't I watched this in the last 20 years? It's so good.
Truly a sight to see. That leads to the, I guess, the other thing. Sorry, I know I'm still going on about this, but the Camaro. Like, that was the first time I think I'd ever seen a 1967 Camaro. And to this day, because of that movie and that whole scene, when it finally rolls out of the garage after him and Monique get it together after their third or fourth 80s montage that in this movie, which is another thing we should mention. There's a lot of montages in this one. But yeah, when that car is still on my wish list at some point in my life, maybe I'll get it when I have my midlife crisis, which I think is due any minute now.
There you go.
I'll get right on that. All right, let's move on from Better Off Dead. Maybe we'll have to revisit that another time. But we've got two directors that we're going to just kind of talk about briefly. We're not really diving into the works. Again, they're kind of like authors. They've got so much work behind them that it would be, we would never get through the show or the book anyways if we did spend a lot of time talking about some of the stuff they did. So we're really going to just focus on, hey, let's talk about maybe your favorite movie from these guys. Let's start with Terry Gilliam. So those of you who don't know, Terry Gilliam is an American. He now is an expat. He lives out in London. I think he actually denounced his citizenship in the U.S. So he's over there full time, which is totally cool because I never thought him any more than English because of the Monty Python group. But he's directed a number of movies. He co-directed Monty Python and the Holy Grail with Terry Jones. Jabberwocky, which is another great movie, or late 70s. Time Bandits, which always creeped me out as a kid. I don't know why. I guess little people, I don't know. I had something weird with them.
Small hands smell like cabbage.
Yeah.
That's an Austin Powers line. Don't everybody freak out.
I know that's a line from a movie. We're just quoting. That's all.
That's it.
But what? So, and I'm not going to go through all these. But what? And I probably didn't touch on your favorite. What was your favorite movie from Terry Gilliam?
12 Monkeys.
I mean, yeah. What do you think, or why do you say that?
It was the first. I don't know if it was the first, but it's the sci-fi movie that sticks out in my mind where it wasn't sci-fi. It was more like psychological. Like, is this guy crazy? Is he not crazy? Yeah. And I absolutely loved it. I just Bruce Willis was great in it, and Brad Pitt. Oh,
yeah,
man.
Early Brad Pitt.
Yeah, like that movie does it for me. I can sit down and watch that movie any day of the week.
It is a good movie, and it's pretty well reviewed, and I know it was a hit. At least this is one of the ones I think I remember going to see in the theater. So it was at the time when it came out, there was enough there to pull me in to watch it. But yeah, anytime it's on, I don't have a problem watching it at all.
What about you?
What about you? Well, you had mentioned Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Was that one that was on this list, or would have made it?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've never really been a big Johnny Depp fan.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's one of those movies that I don't want to say that it glorifies drugs, but it glorifies drugs. And that's never been who I am or what I've been about. I'm not saying I, never partook of a little weed, but I don't know. It was just not my thing. And it's never been my thing. Like, it's just too far out there for me.
Yeah. It was a little trippy too.
Yeah. But and we're getting ready to talk about something that was super trippy. So.
Right. We'll spark one up here in a minute when we get to HR puff and stuff.
Perfect.
So I guess it's got to be Holy Grail. I mean, it's just an obvious answer for me because of that's one of those movies that growing up watched it. There's still lines in there. I can quote whole scenes, if not most of the movie. So yeah, it's just kind of a no-brainer. And then I would throw Time Bandits up there because even though it did spook me out as a kid, I think when Time Bandits came out, I was like 8 years old. But there's a couple scenes in there that just terrified me. Like at the very end where they get turned to stone. I don't know if have you ever seen Time Bandits?
Okay. Full disclosure, I've never seen Monty Python.
Oh my goodness.
I've started watching it several times. I don't know why you have me on.
You signed a disclaimer that said no, I'm kidding.
Look, I've always been of the mind that you can break people up into two groups. Those who love Monty Python and those who hate Monty Python. Guess which group I'm in.
All right. Well, we won't talk about Time Bandits or Monty Python. That's fair. I know a few people that don't like Monty Python, and I have unfriended them on Facebook. But nonetheless,
well, I think Monty Python should get his due. Just like Journey, I think you have to respect what he's done for comedy. It's not my bag. It's not my thing. Well,
yeah, it's not a real person. So
no, but the whole Monty Python genre thing, it just whatever. You know what I meant.
No, I know. I was giving you grief. Yeah. So Holy Grail, Time Bandits. I'd throw Brazil in there too. That's a great movie. I don't know if you've ever seen Brazil.
It's a country.
Oh, it's another dystopian like science fiction film that came out in like the mid '80s. But no, we won't talk about it then. So,
well, it sounds like 1984 then.
Not really.
All right. Well, then
But there was he did another one, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Did you ever watch that? That's one I can't stand. Like I really cannot get to. I've tried many times to get to that movie, and it just fails horribly. I think I've gotten at most maybe 30, 40 minutes into the film, and I just completely lose interest. I don't know what it is about that film, but so I'm not a huge Terry Gilliam fan.
There's a lot of films like that for me where I try, I really do, and I just can't. And I think that's everybody has their limit. Everybody has their comfort zone. Some people can be pushed out of it, and some people will try, like me, and be like, "No, this just isn't for me. I'm not getting any enjoyment out of it." So, all
right. Well, the other director we've got is Guillermo del Toro. So this is the Mexican director. He's directed everything from Kronos, I think it was his first film, to Mimic, Blade 2, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim. Crimson Peak, most recently Shape of Water, which was Academy Award winning Shape of Water. But if you had to pick a movie from there, top movie from Del Toro, what would you go with?
I don't want to say what everybody thinks I'm going to say because it just seems obvious. So instead, I will give you the sleeper, and that's Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim. Now,
dude, I love that movie. Pacific Rim did it for me.
Yeah. So I'll, in full disclosure, since we're all being honest here and we're all just friends, I have not seen Pacific Rim.
Dude, you need to stop the podcast right now and go rent it.
All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you guys in No, I haven't. And there's no good reason whatsoever. Like this has everything about me from what I've seen in the trailers and the premise and the kaijus and all that stuff. Like this is everything that I liked growing up.
This is in your wheelhouse.
I just haven't got around to seeing
this
it.
This is right in your wheelhouse. This is a home run for you. You should watch this movie. It's a turn your brain off, just action movie that makes no sense. Giant robots fighting monsters. It's glorious.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I'm in.
You'll love it. Yeah, you'll absolutely love it. And if you don't, come on and just tell everybody how full of crap I am.
Did you see the second one, the sequel recently?
I haven't seen the sequel yet. I haven't, but I want to see it. I'm always, isn't the second...
It's got Finn in it.
Well, yeah, that's probably part of the reason why I haven't seen it. But isn't, like, I don't know. The second movie of any trilogy, normally, with few exceptions, has let me down. Back to the Future 2 was a letdown. Like, it's a great trilogy overall, but Back to the Future 2... when you think about Back to the Future, is the weakest of all of them. I kind of feel that way with a lot of sequels, with Empire being like one of the exception to that rule.
Okay. Yeah. I was about to just cut you right now.
Empire Strikes Back is one of the greatest cinematic experiences of all time. That cinematic movies seems redundant. So I just haven't seen it yet. I probably will. I don't know. I don't know what I'm waiting for, but I loved the first one. I went and saw it in the theater. I saw it with a couple of friends and we all loved it. And we were like, why don't they make more movies like this?
I don't know. They did it in the late 70s and early 80s.
Right. But the special effects are so much better now than they were then. These movies should be getting made all the time.
Yeah.
And they're just not.
Yeah. And I don't like that whole new, like the Monsterverse from, is it Warner Brothers? Are they the ones doing this now? Yeah, I believe so. This isn't tied directly into like the Godzilla, King Kong, Monsterverse, does it?
No, I don't think so.
So they're totally different. It would be great if they just merged those two somehow. I think they're the same group, if I'm not mistaken. I could be completely wrong. There's somebody probably yelling at me right now listening to the show, but it just when I see this, I'm like, yeah, here we go. We've got, these big kaiju robot fighting guys, and we've got Godzilla, we've got King Kong, King of Monsters is coming out. Find a way to get all these guys together and have one glorious battle royale. That'd be really neat.
Right. I think Godzilla would be a lot like the new Godzilla is good, right? But I think it would be better served if you had these giant robots going up against Godzilla.
True.
So I am on board with your vision of this Monsterverse.
Back to Del Toro.
Just went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So I guess I have to say Hellboy maybe is my favorite movie that Del Toro's done. In 2004, I really like the movie. I like Ron Perlman, honestly, as an actor, and
yes.
Him as Hellboy was awesome. But you had Doug Jones, who had worked with Del Toro, like a Mimic. He was in both of the Hellboy movies, Pan's Labyrinth, Crimson Peak. The Shape of Water. He was the underwater creature. He was Silver Surfer in that terrible movie that they did for the Fantastic Four. He also was in The Strain that Del Toro did, the TV series, I think, as well. And then recently, and you probably know this, Star Trek Discovery, whoever Commander Saru is,
yes,
that's him. That's the guy.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, Hellboy was probably the better, was my favorite. Though I like Blade 2. As cheesy as that was,
again,
when that came out,
out of the trilogy, that's probably
the weaker.
I don't know if that's the weaker of the two of the three. I think the third one isn't
that's probably a little bit weaker.
Isn't the third one with Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel, or is that the second one? I don't even remember now. They all kind of run together. I loved the first Blade, but all the other ones were kind of not really that great.
I actually enjoyed the Blade series.
It was. I didn't not watch it. I'd watch that over some of the other movies we've talked about tonight, like Monty Python movies. I would certainly watch the Blade movies over that. And I loved Hellboy. I absolutely loved Hellboy. That was the movie that I kind of felt was obvious. Everybody loves Hellboy.
It was. And it was the time that particular comic book was it Dark Horse that was doing that? I forget now if it was Dark Horse or someone else, but it definitely was a comic book it's not Marvel, it's not DC. They really kind of took a chance, rolled a dice, and threw Hellboy out there. And it kind of sparked and started a lot of these there's so many movies, guys, that you watch now, and you have no idea that they actually started with comic books. And to me, when I think back of when not really a lot of that started was when Hellboy came out. It proved that you did not have to have a character from DC, Marvel, those universes, and have a good, successful movie come out from it. So at that point, a lot of the independent writers and artists and all that started getting a lot more spotlight, and more people were looking at their works, and we got all kinds of stuff that spun up for us. So for me, I'm kind of throwing it in there, giving it more weight because of what it actually did for a lot of the the movie industry, and especially these lesser known characters in the comic book worlds that would go on to become movies and TV shows and that kind of thing. So, and I have not seen Shape of Water. I think I'm going to wait for the Bumblebee movie to come out because I understand that's pretty much the same premise there. So, looking forward to that.
Awesome.
All right, let's get trippy.
Do we have to?
Get your bongs out because we're going to talk about HR Puffin Stuff. So, HR Puffin Stuff was a kids television show, I guess. I don't know. From 1969, it was created by Sid and Marty Kroft, which we can probably do a whole show on with the number of stuff that they've done. But it starred Jack Wilde as a kid named Jimmy. It had Billy Hayes as Witchy Poo. And Billy Hayes, she's awesome on all the characters that she does. But it's got voices from Lenny Weinrib, as he does Puffin Stuff, the main character, or I guess the main puppet, if you want to call him that. It's also got Joan Gerber, Walker Edmonston, and a number of other folks. And it's a Saturday morning kids TV show that ran for one season. There's a total of 17 episodes. You can probably get through all the episodes in, no time at all, really, because once you've seen one, you pretty much seen them all. Right. But it originally aired on NBC in 1969, and it was the very first Sid and Marty Kroft live action program that they did. They would go on to do a number of other live action shows throughout the 70s. And even to this day, they've got there's one on Nickelodeon that they do with Caesar, the dog guy, the dog whisperer. What's his name?
Yeah, I don't know. Caesar? I don't know.
Yeah, Caesar, whatever his name is. He's actually doing a show. It's actually his son that is doing it. It's called Mutton Strut, I think is what it is. And it's actually produced by Sid and Marty Kroft. So they're still out there doing stuff. They've enlisted these two now to do it, Caesar and his son. And it's a show where they've got these dogs that come on and the trees are alive. And I think the trees that live in the backyard are actually named after Sid and Marty Kroft. But anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent. So getting back to this was this show. It was, if you've never seen it, do yourself a favor and just go try to get through at least one of these episodes. But it's so trippy. Like, you have to be on drugs or LSD or some kind of narcotic to really understand what the heck is happening in these shows. So let me pause there. Was this something that you remember growing up and watching at all, or was this just something that you were forced to do because I asked you to do it?
This was something that I was forced to do because you asked me to do it. This falls under the challenges that you right. give instead of homework.
Yeah, that's fair.
This is just bad. I tried. I did try. I feel like Mike, when he would be on here and he'd be like, yeah, I didn't watch this because I didn't watch this. Like, I tried. I gave it a good 5 minutes and I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Right. I don't know what's what. I'm just going to say, I'm sorry. I didn't watch this.
No, it's fine. This one's tough to get through. So this thing came on. It was on growing up in the 70s. It did. I remember when it came, not when it came out, but when it came back, like it was on, it ran on, I don't even know what, I guess it was NBC. I don't know. But it was on at different times throughout the late 70s. And so
I want to know who
it.
Greenlighted this. Who watched this and went, yes, we need more of this.
Right. In fact, let's sign up. Well, again, to be fair, it only did one season. So I don't know, maybe it didn't do as well as they had hoped it would do. But
obviously.
But it's really bad. I mean, the whole premise is you've got this kid named Jack Wild. He's got a magic flute, and he gets on a boat and goes off to another faraway land where there's talking.
The fact that you have to sit here and tell us what it's about I'm sorry, it strikes me as humorous.
No, that's fair. And it's got a laugh track. I really hate laugh tracks.
But that was a staple of the 80s and the 70s.
Well, late 70s. Yeah, no, you're right. That's, they couldn't get the comedy to come across the right way, so they had to force you to know. It was your cue to laugh.
But it was even
when you heard the laugh track.
They even did it in cartoons like Scooby-Doo for a while, where there was the laugh track. I mean, that's for that time period. That, I guess it makes sense. I don't know. Growing up, you didn't really know what was a laugh track and what wasn't, and they kind of had to start saying this was filmed before a live studio audience, so you knew it wasn't a laugh track. But at the same time, they have that light that says laughed, and they've got the light that says clap, and they've got the light that says, so isn't everything really a laugh track?
Yeah.
Wow.
This was, the whole show is very, it's very creepy. It screams it's psychedelic to me at times, mostly throughout all of it. It's pretty psychedelic. And we've joked that you had to be on drugs to watch it. So there's there's been a lot of controversy around the song. The song, it's got an intro song, HR, Puffin Stuff, can't do a little because you can't do enough, that kind of thing. And there's always been controversy as to whether or not they were trying to imply that, you needed to do drugs or advocating for the use of drugs, narcotics, that kind of thing. And Sid and Marty Kroft, I don't know, you can go out and you can find all these different, because I wanted to have something concrete to come back to the show and say, yes or no, this song was not about doing drugs. And honestly, I don't know. Like, there are a number of times when they went on record as saying, no, the song is not about drugs, the title song, the theme song. And they'll turn around, a couple of years later and give you this comment about, well, it could have been, or it's really up to you to decide. So they're so on the fence about it that you have, I guess I'm only led to believe that it really is about drugs. So if you get a chance, go listen to the main theme song for HR Puff and Stuff, and you decide whether or not they're talking about drug use. Me, I think they are.
Isn't that kind of like Puff the Magic Dragon?
Yeah, very much so. The same thing. Yeah. There was Cling and Clang that were the Keystone Cops. They creep me out. They don't speak. They're fumbling around. It's just bizarre. Jack Wilde. So we talked about him. That's the kid that plays Jimmy, the main character. This is a British actor. He was smoking by the age of 12. And there is a video on YouTube called Jack Wilde's Death, What Really Happened. And it's very sad. It's all like a text that goes up, and it kind of gives you the history about what happened to this poor child actor. It's another tragic, story of a poor child actor who goes on to use drugs in a lot of horrible ways and ends up just dying. But it's the weirdest thing, and you get through the whole thing, and the whole time I'm watching, I'm going, why are they using the music from The Karate Kid 2? But if you get a chance, go watch the video if you want to know more about his life and his tragic life. But know that song that you hear in the background, yeah, that's the music from The Karate Kid 2.
Only you would catch that.
I say fear, and I'm like, it's kind of not doing it for me. Like, all I keep thinking about is Miyagi and Sato.
Wax on. Wax off.
Yeah. They did a movie in 1970, believe it or not. There's a HR Puff and Stuff movie. So if you really, want to just do yourself in, go watch that. That's out there. And
go listen to Journey instead.
No, yeah, go listen to Journey instead. Here's one thing though I do want to cover. So in 1977, the Crofts actually sued McDonald's, and they sued them. It's a very interesting story, and it starts back 7 years prior to. So in 1970, McDonald's was looking for a way to introduce this new kind of kids campaign and characters, and which we all know as McDonald's Land. So do you remember McDonald's Land?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So so it's the playground, right? We had Grimace, the Hamburglar, all these characters with Ronald McDonald, Mayor McCheese, the Fry Guys,
the Big Mac. That was the cop. I don't even know what his name was.
Yeah, I think it was Officer
Mac,
something like whatever. Oh. But all these characters came out as a result of this one company it was an advertising company called Needham, Harper and Steers, and these guys were tasked by McDonald's to come up with a concept for them because they really wanted to have this kind of McDonald's Land theme going on for kids and all of their playground areas at their restaurants. And so this advertising company then reached out to Sid and Marty Kroft. Well, the Crofts, and we kind of skipped over this, the Crofts have a long history. They have like the 6th generation puppeteers, right? So this is not like two dudes smoking pot saying, man, let's put a show together that we're going to have kids. And no, these guys they were actually professionals and they come from a long background pedigree of puppeteers. So the advertising company reaches out to them. They start talking, getting in negotiations and tossing around ideas back and forth. Well, the deal falls through. And so Sid and Marty Kroft don't commit to this. Instead, this company, Needham, Harper and Steers, go out and do their own thing. And really all they did was take a lot of the same the stuff that they had talked to Sid and Marty Kroft about. So what happened was we had characters like Mayor McCheese. When you look at him, he looks like Puff and Stuff. He talks like Puff and Stuff, and his eyes were the same way. Well, obviously Puff and Stuff wasn't going to put up with this, or I guess Sid and Marty Kroft didn't want to allow that to happen. So they actually took McDonald's to court. They sued him in prior to that, the court finally settled in 1977. And McDonald's had to pay a huge fine over to them. So they actually won. They took down the big arches in this little lawsuit. So there's some pictures out there. If you get a chance, go look at Mayor McCheese, put him up against HR Puff and Stuff, and you can kind of see the similarities. They're both big hulking guys. They're both mayors of these islands or fantasy lands. They've got the sash that looks very similar as well. It always creeped me out, the McDonald's Land characters. I don't know about you. I mean, the Hamburger was okay. Grimace was about all I could tolerate. And then Ronald McDonald, which I was never afraid of clowns, but I thought he was okay.
I was never afraid of clowns, but
everybody else, yeah, no thanks. Like there were some really weird characters.
I just didn't want the Hamburglar to steal my hamburger. That was all I was really concerned about. I enjoyed it because it was a chance to, spend time usually with my mom. Because my dad didn't want to take kids to a McDonald's and sit there and watch us run around like idiots. He didn't want to, so it was spend time with my mom and my brother and go to a park, so to speak, because they had slides and seesaws and all kinds of stuff at McDonald's. So I enjoyed it. It was always a good outing, and none of the stuff scared me. So I'm sorry that you were scared of Mayor McCheese.
Well, no, it was, I was scared of Mayor McCheese, but the one that scared me was the one you mentioned, Officer Big Mac, because
why?
Because you had to go in his mouth.
Police are your friends.
No, not when their mouth is open as a gate and I'm supposed to walk in there. And it looked like it was a jail. Like it was bars, literally bars that went around.
I feel like you need to see a therapist about this.
Maybe, but they're, so if you don't know what we're talking about, the playground areas at McDonald's a long time ago had these characters. They were all themed with these characters. And that one's the only one that really stands out to me that scared the crap out of me. But there were others as well.
I like Grimace. So. Big purple dude.
Yeah, he was nice. Yeah. He was nice. Yeah. Nothing wrong with him.
He seemed likable. He seemed like a cool guy you could sit down and have a beer with.
Yeah, he's a big dope. That's why I think I liked him.
Yeah, I probably just related.
All right. Well, I guess we'll put the bong down. If you anything else, anything you want to talk about HR Puffin? If you have a chance, like I said, go see this. Go watch it.
No, don't. Please,
no,
don't. Look, he can advocate for it all he wants, and it's his show. As the guest, I'm telling you, please do yourself a favor. Go listen to Oingo Boingo.
Probably better off doing that.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I guess we'll talk about Land of Lost. Land of Lost.
Another challenge. Another challenge.
So this is another Sid and Marty Kroft show. So Land of the Lost aired between 1974 and 1977. It starred Spencer Milligan as a father named Rick Marshall. We'll talk about the premise here because there's not much to talk about. There was Wesley, and I don't even know his last name. In the credits, he's listed as Wesley. They don't give him a last name, which they do with Brazilian soccer players. He's not a Brazilian soccer player, but whatever. His name is Wesley. He plays Will Marshall, the son. Kathy Coleman is Holly Marshall. She's the daughter. We've got Phillip. I guess his name is Paley, whatever. He plays this character named Chaka, who I'm pretty sure is just Sagwa grown up. Sagwa being the Wookiee from the Han Solo movie recently. So look very similar. And then we had, there was Ron Harper. So Ron Harper comes in. I guess we'll get into this in a little bit, but in season 3, the dad leaves. He's gone. He escapes. And so the uncle comes, named Jack Marshall, and he shows up and takes over.
Now, by escape, do you mean he was like, yeah, this is dumb, I'm out?
Sort of. In real life, I think he felt like he was maybe bigger than the show. I forget the reason why he exited the show. But he didn't. He was certainly kind of at odds with the creators and all that. So he ends up leaving, and so the show's got to go on, right? So very much in the same way that we had the Duke brothers or the Duke cousins that came into the Dukes of Hazzard. Here we go. We've got Uncle Jack Marshall, who just happens to go through the same sequence of events to get to the nephew and niece
to the land of the lost. Yes,
yeah, season 3. So yeah, all right. Where do we start?
Can we just end?
No, right. I want to ask a question real quick. So better use of the banjo in a TV series, Land of the Lost or Dukes of Hazzard?
Dukes of Hazzard, hands down. Yeah, no. Look, so you gave me 2 episodes of this to watch.
Yeah.
I did it. Challenge accepted, challenge completed. Gold star for Crowley. Man, was it hard. I don't even remember which ones I gave you. Did I give you The Stranger? Dude, I remember the last one you gave me because that one you gave me just recently. And you're like, watch this when you've got a chance. I'm like, all right.
Oh, that was Lone Wolf.
That was Lone Wolf. That was
no, Medicine Man. Medicine Man.
But his name was Lone
Final
Wolf.
Answer.
Yep. Yeah. And he came through whatever weird portal sent these morons to the land of the lost. And then some captain from the cavalry, the U.S. cavalry, comes through and he's got a horse, but it was Lone Wolf's horse, but it wasn't Lone Wolf. I didn't even care. By the end of the show, I didn't care.
It's Captain Diggs.
Whatever.
Just to be
sure. Captain Diggs. Look, this show, I remember watching the show as a kid and like waiting for it on Saturday mornings for it to come on. And I for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Like,
it was a good show
apparently
as a kid.
young me was an idiot because this show is so stupid.
All right, so let me give you the premise of the show.
Okay.
You've got dad and his two kids. They get in a raft. They're going down, and they fall over a waterfall, and somehow they land in the land of the lost. That's it. That's really it. And they've somehow gone back in time. It's really actually not. You come to find out they're in another world, I guess another dimension, where dinosaurs are still roaming the earth. They've got these like primitive Chaka beans, or this kid's name is Chaka. He's just like a primitive ape kind of character. And there's also these aliens called the Sleestaks, which are these, I don't know, lizard men looking guys.
That's like the noise they make. It's just
really bad lisp the entire time. A lot of spitting. A lot of
spitting.
But the Sleestaks are kind of they live on the planet, and they're just trying to get home. That's really what it's about.
Are they really trying to get home though? I don't feel like they're trying very hard.
No, they're not. They really aren't, to be fair. Did I tell you to ask you, or I shouldn't tell you? Did I ask you to watch an episode called The Stranger?
Yes, you did.
Did you watch that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know who wrote that episode?
I do, because I'm reading the show notes.
Yeah, so Walter Koenig wrote that one, which I thought it's a good episode.
Okay, like, I think good is a subjective term. There's okay.
So in that episode,
like, if you're comparing this to the Medicine Man episode, sure, it's a good episode.
Yeah, no, it's a great episode, right? Compared to that one. That's trash.
I don't understand. Like, can I just ask a question real quick about the Medicine Man episode?
Yeah.
So the Captain Diggs and Lone Wolf, they leave.
Right. I didn't.
Where did they?
Yeah. How did
they get home?
I don't know. I guess. Why didn't they go?
Why didn't these people follow them?
You're overthinking this.
Okay, I guess. I apologize.
So that episode actually was the last episode of the whole series. It was in season 3. It's called Medicine Man, and they don't. It ends with Will playing a guitar, electric at that. I don't know how that happened,
right?
but
it's like dude, I just wrote this song about home. Let me play it for you.
So if you watch first, second, third season, they actually get away. They actually go home, sort of. At the very last episode of season 1, they run into a character named Enoch. And we're going to talk about Enoch because he comes up in The Stranger, which is the episode that I asked you to watch. But Enoch actually comes back, which is kind of sucks because the way that the Stranger episode ends, you think, oh, that was really good. There was an ending. He's gone home. Oh, no, he's not. He's back. So they bring him back in the final episode of season 1. And I won't get into the full premise of this episode. But really what happens is Enoch figures out, I still can't go home because something's wrong. And what's wrong is the fact that the 3 of them are still in this universe. So the only way this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the only way Enoch can go home is he has to send those 3 home as well. So the only way he can send those 3 home is that 3 people have to take their place. So they go into this cave where they're kind of watching the event of all 3 of the marshals going over the cliff down into the water, the waterfall. And what they decide and deduce is that they've got to somehow make those 3 people that they see, the versions of them that are going over the waterfall, come into the land of the lost. And the 3 that are there currently can then go home. So the way that episode ends is the 3 that are there that we've seen all of season 1 go home, and the 3 that now appear, that episode ends with the very beginning of the first episode, and so it's an even exchange.
How do you live with yourself after that, knowing that your other self is back where you just were?
Exactly.
This
bunch of jerk faces. Why would you do that?
Right? It makes no sense.
All right. Well, hold on. Let's talk about the Stranger, because so we talked about the Sleestaks, and this is where it was I thought it was neat, at least the way Walter Koenig had written this. And so this is Chekhov, right, from the original Star Trek.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's the guy that wrote this episode, and they've actually got like Ben Bova. There's actually all these. If you look at who wrote some of the episodes, they're like famous sci-fi writers at the time, or had some kind of sci-fi connection in some way. So they wasn't like, again, Sid and Marty Kroft, smoking doobies, putting these shows together. They actually had some pretty good talent that came in and wrote these. But in this particular episode, you're introduced to this character named Enoch, and he's one of these Sleestaks. And throughout the entire episode, you're thinking that somehow he keeps saying he went back in his past and he's there stuck with them. And these Sleestaks are his long descendants, right? And the big plot twist is at the very end, you realize that he actually didn't go back in the past. He actually went into the future, and the Slee Stacks were all of the people that his people would eventually become, right? His society, that society would become so deteriorated and fall apart to the point where they were just kind of these mindless creatures that were running around. He can, he speaks English perfectly. We don't know where that came from. He's super intelligent.
I don't know where any of this came from.
Well, yeah, drugs. That's,
well,
I mean, that's the easy
I think we
answer
found
here.
the theme of this episode.
Yeah. But yeah, anyways, that's smart. That episode was probably way too smart for the rest of the series, to be fair.
Well, look, I think they had a lot of high hopes for this, for this series, a lot of aspirations that just weren't met for whatever reasons. The writing was terrible later on. But as a kid, like I said, I remember being super excited for this every time it came on. And are they going to get home? Are they going to get home? Mm-hmm. And, it is a casualty of poor special effects and terrible writing.
It's a lot of clay animation, like stop animation.
Yeah. And terrible writing.
I like the gems, the jewels. Those are neat.
Sure. I guess.
I don't know.
That weird Wookiee looking dude, Chaka, just freaks me out. I don't think it freaked me out as a kid, but as an adult, I'm like, that's just creepy.
Yeah, he is. I had a lunchbox. I had a Land of the Lost lunchbox. I do remember that.
Of course you did. Of course you did. I did not.
So they did a reboot in 1991 of this show. I did not catch that. In fact, I didn't even do any research on that one for the show. They did the feature film 2009 with Will Ferrell. Did you watch that?
I did. I did not watch that. Not funny.
Yeah. And then recently, 2018, the Crofts confirmed that the Land of the Lost is coming back with 1 hour length episodes. I
might catch one or two. I mean, I have fond memories of this show. And I think when you go back, we've talked about this before, nostalgia kind of, you look back with rose colored glasses and this show just doesn't stand the test of time. Like Better Off Dead stands the test of time because it deals with issues that I think every kid deals with even today. And so it stands that test of time. This does not translate well in 2018.
Yeah. And even though this show, again, it aired from 74 to 77, this was in circulation throughout the 70s and even into the mid 80s. They had it on CBS Morning. Like it was right there with all the other kind of cartoons and shows that were coming out. So they were still, capitalizing on the success of the show and in the stories and characters and all that. So, all right. Well, I guess maybe we'll have to come back to the show and talk about why anytime when the theme song, they would say the Land of the Lost, and then you would hear lost.
Because there was nobody else there but them. So it's like,
I think they were trying to do like an echo. I don't know.
That was terrible.
Listen to this theme song. It's terrible. All right.
Don't want to.
Let's talk about our last TV show before we get into Star Trek Next Generation, Airwolf. And I love this show. So Airwolf came out in between 1984 and 1987. There was 4 seasons, a total of 80 episodes, created by Donald P. Belisario. It starred Jan Michael Vince as Stringfellow, or just String, as you would come to know him in the show. Ernest Borgnine as Dominic Don Santini. He had Alex Cord as Michael Goldsmith Briggs III, or as I like to know him or call him, the most interesting one-eyed man in the world, because he wore that stupid patch on his eye the whole time. You had Jean Bruce Scott, who came out in season 2. In fact, she premieres, and this tells you how much I love the show. She doesn't make it in the first season. She's in the very first episode of season 2, and she plays Caitlin O'Shaughnessy. She's from Texas. So she's in an episode called Sweet Britches, which is very demeaning. Which, by the way, had David Graff, Tackleberry from Police Academy.
Tackleberry, yes.
Yeah, he's in that episode, and he plays a hillbilly Texan. So I hate when they do Texas stuff. They always portray us as these redneck, gun-toting, horseback riding.
It's Texas.
I don't even I drive a Chevy Malibu. I don't
you don't ride a horse?
In a horse anywhere. No. I don't have I've got boots, but you can't.
Do you have a hat?
That's about it. I've got a hat.
Yeah. Well, then guess what?
All right. Maybe I'm fitting a stereotype. I don't even realize it. All right. So really the big pull for this show is the helicopter,
and
right?
the theme song.
Well, we'll get to the theme song in a minute. Don't get
jumping
carried away
ahead.
here. Yeah, jumping ahead. But so just was this a show that you watched growing up?
Religiously. Yeah. I loved this show. I tried to find episodes of it, and I could just find bits and pieces. So I found bits and pieces on YouTube and I watched those, and I'm like, this doesn't hold up, but I would still watch the crap out of this.
Yeah, no, really. It's so cheesy and it was great. Like I've watched a number of episodes in preparation for this. It's on, if anybody is interested, it's on Hulu. If you've got a Hulu account, they have all the seasons on there, so you can watch them.
How did I miss that? I have Hulu.
You should have asked.
I should have. I watched a couple of clips like Airwolf versus Red Wolf. Did you catch that episode?
No.
There's 3 helicopters. So it's the guy who invented Airwolf going up against Ernest Borgnine. That's the only really guy I remember. And then String. Is that
Don?
Yeah.
Yeah, Don and String are the main characters.
And then it looks like they blew up Airwolf, and then Red Wolf comes in, and it's some guy with a hillbilly accent, and it's the same helicopter, but red. And then he blows up that other guy. And that was the clip. And I'm like, I don't remember Red Wolf.
I don't remember that either. What season was that?
It was just a clip on YouTube that I saw. It's like a 5-minute clip. The chase scenes, like it's practical effects. They didn't use special effects. These were practical effects that look terrible, but it's so good. I would watch I'm just telling you right now, I may stop watching the Clone Wars and start watching Airwolf again.
Yeah, I don't know if I would advise you not to do that, because as much as I love the show, let's not get carried away, because it's a good show. It's super cheesy, and this is at the height. This is in the 80s where we really had a lot of vehicles that were kind of characters in of themselves, like Knight Rider. Yeah, Kit was one of them. Street Hawk, if you remember that. That was the motorcycle TV show that only ran one season. Which, by the way, Tangerine Dream did the theme song for Street Hawk.
Why?
So, yeah.
I'd rather watch HR Puffin stuff than listen to Tangerine Dream.
They're great.
Oh, my goodness.
Blue Thunder. Do you remember that? Blue Thunder, the movie?
Yes.
With, Roy Schneider.
Yes.
It's another helicopter movie.
Yes.
Super tech, high tech. They actually did a TV series as well.
They did
for Blue Thunder in '84.
Blue Thunder and Airwolf competed against each other on opposite networks. Wasn't one on CBS and one on ABC?
Yeah, something like that. I only remember the TV show because it had Dana Carvey, believe it or not, before he was the Dana Carvey we know from Saturday Night Live. He was in that, and then it had Bubba Smith and Dick Butkus. Yes, like NFL stars. Yes. Bubba Smith and Dick Butkus were in that. Yep.
I still preferred Airwolf because Ernest Borgnine.
He was like the grandpa we never had. But we also had like General Lee at the time from Dukes of Hazzards, the A-Team van, the Mystery Machine. I'm trying to think of other vehicles that were popular.
There was one. It wasn't really a vehicle, but it would turn into a vehicle. And the guy, I don't even remember the name of the show. I've been trying to rack my brain all day to think of this, and I can't. I know it was on, I think it was ABC, but he was basically computer generated.
Yeah.
Automan. That's it. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. And then his car would make 90-degree turns.
Right. Yeah. It was a good show.
It was not a good show.
No, it was not a good show at all. Just stay away from Automan. It's terrible. And this particular the helicopter was just awesome. Yes. It looked really cool. I think it was like a Bell 222 or whatever. I don't know what that. Trust me, I'm not an expert by any means.
I was just gonna. Are you an aviator?
No.
It does look cool, but it looks like an 80s luxury helicopter and not so much an attack craft.
Yeah, that's fair. It looks like a flying orca.
Were you waiting for Michael Jackson to free it? I don't. I'm so confused right now.
Wow, you got to put. If you think hard enough, you'll get the connection there. Yeah, and it was and it had a lot of. It was very similar to Blue Thunder. We probably should have done something here where we get into which one wins, because
Airwolf.
They both
Airwolf.
Yeah, Airwolf wins. But they both had like. There's a lot of tech in the show for both Airwolf and Blue Thunder that was like hypothetical, theoretical at the time, but today, like, it had a computer, infrared vision. There was
heat-seeking missiles, stealth.
Yeah, stealth, which was, maybe we probably had that, to be fair, but it wasn't until like the B stealth bombers came out that became so mainstream with F-117s and all that. But But back then, this was kind of like, hey, we're never going to do it. This is all kind of theoretical.
It
stuff.
had turbo boost.
Yeah, turbo boost, which really all they did is just speed up the film to make it look like it was going faster than what it was.
When I saw that, I was like, we had this on kit. We had this on a car. And they just said, let's put this on a helicopter.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah, lots of lights, lots of gadgets.
Yeah, it was. I mean, but if you take a look at the interior of an actual honest to God, attack craft, even just a regular there are all kinds of buttons and knobs and stuff to mess with. So, I suppose that's realistic. They're not labeled Turbo Boost and Missile 1. Right. So there's that, but it's a good cheesy. Like I said, I would still watch it. It's really, it's quintessential 80s.
Yeah. And the whole premise of the show is pretty simple. They've got this guy String. He was the test pilot when this was a test vehicle for this vehicle called Airwolf. And he eventually becomes the pilot of it. And the company called the Firm, I guess, is what they're called. They're basically an offshoot of the CIA. They're sending him on these different covert missions in Airwolf. And the first season's it's all right. It's cool. There's really not a whole lot of comedy. And then the producers came back for the second season and they really wanted to make it more family appealing. And so that's where I think Ernest Borgnine's character really starts to shine, because they have him being much more friendly and funny in a lot of these episodes. And that's what I remember most about it. It had these like comedic elements that as a kid I really enjoyed. Then on top of that, I got a lot of explosions and, terrible 80 mullets getting blown up left and right. So it's a pretty simple premise. That's really what they're doing. They're just going around on these different covert op missions in this really cool helicopter and killing the bad guys.
Very episodic.
Yeah.
Not really a whole
theme song, though.
Yeah. The theme song is great.
Theme song is awesome.
They're still on point. Still on point today. They just need to update it a little bit. Still on point.
And it's super catchy. And it was such a hit that when they came back for the second and third seasons, they changed all the music. Like if you listen to the music in the first season, it's very orchestrated. By second and third season, they were capitalizing on the success of the theme song and the synthetic electronic sound of it. So the music in the episodes between seasons 2 and season 3 are more electronic synthesizer. And there's a guy out there, I don't know what his name is or whatever, but he compiled all of the music onto CDs, and you can get these like in CD swap shops and download them off, unpopular wares sites if you really wanted to. But yeah, there's Airwolf Extended Themes is what it's called. But you can download all the music if you're into that kind of stuff, which I am. So yeah, it's good stuff. It's a catchy tune. Gets in your head. Good luck getting it out.
I'm trying really hard not to just hum it right now.
All right, well, let's get to the bread and butter of the show, Star Trek: The Next Generation. So for those of you who don't know, so we did cover the original Star Trek series in the last episode with SP, because he's a huge Star Trek fan as well. And I promised him we would come back, and SP, if you're listening, I promise you we will come back to the original series at some point, because I have something special for the Star Trek series. But for this one, I thought we'd anchor the show on The Next Generation. And this is obviously the second attempt to bring Star Trek to TV outside of the cartoon. We're not going to talk about that, but this was the second series, and this ran from 1987 to 1994. There were 7 seasons, 178 episodes, which is crazy. That's a lot of episodes. Created still by Gene Roddenberry. It starred Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Jonathan Frakes as Commander Will Riker, LeVar Burton as Geordi LaForge, Michael Dorn as Worf, Gates McFadden as Beverly Crusher, Marina, is it Sirtis?
Sirtis, yes.
Yeah, Sirtis is Lieutenant Commander Deanna Troi.
Oh, yeah.
Brent Spiner is Lieutenant Commander Data, and then Will Wheaton as
we don't talk about
Wesley
Will Wheaton.
Crusher.
Shut up, Wesley.
No, we're gonna talk about Will Wheaton.
Shut up, Wesley.
Okay, so, and there's a crap ton of other actors, honestly, like most notably John Delancey.
Oh, that's Q.
No, John Delancey is the dad from Twisted Sisters.
Sure, but he played Q.
Video.
He played Q.
No, I'm kidding. I know, but that's what he's always
that what you
that
know
dad.
Him as? Seriously?
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. He had an impact on me as a kid.
Apparently.
John Delancey is Q. Whoopi Goldberg.
Guinan,
yeah, she was in there too. Which she just played Whoopi Goldberg.
She just played Whoopi serving drinks in the future.
Yeah. In the 10 Forward Lounge, which was just the equivalent of the Regal Beagle on the Discovery.
That is not accurate.
Is that right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Cole Meany as Miles O'Brien.
Cole Meany as Miles. He is an underrated actor. He is He's so awesome. Good in everything he does. And I love that they put him on Deep Space Nine because he became such a beloved character on The Next Generation.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a bit part and everybody loved him. And so good on him. Such a great actor.
And I don't have all of the characters or the actors, but I know there are others that went on to either have reprise their roles from The Next Generation in Deep Space Nine and or Voyager. I think we had some carryover characters into that series as well. So
there, Locarno, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head. It was an episode where Wesley was at Starfleet Academy, and he and his group of pilots did something dangerous, and one of their teammates died. And so the Locarno character was actually supposed to be on Voyager, but they decided that because for whatever story reasons, they couldn't do the Locarno character. They just brought the guy back and he played a main character on Voyager. Now, I'm not a big Voyager fan, but whatever. But
I really liked Voyager.
I know you did.
No, I did. And it wasn't because of 7 and 9.
Look, it's not bad. It just wasn't. I watch it. I've watched them several times. I've watched every episode of every Star Trek episode ever more than 3 times.
Wow. All right. Well, that says a lot. Well, that's a good segue into my first question. Trekker or Trekkie? And what is the difference? I still don't even know. Is there a difference to you?
Sure. I think Trekker is more of the modern. That's what modern Trekkers want to be called. They don't want to be called Trekkies because that has a connotation of being kind of a geek and antisocial and kind of the people that Shatner went off on.
On the Saturday Night Live skit?
On the Saturday Night Live skit for those reasons. So I think most people want to be called Trekkers just because of that negative connotation.
Okay, that's fair. So what category would you place yourself in?
Oh, probably somewhere firmly in both. I don't want to be called Trekkie, but I probably am. Like I'm really afraid if I ever met Jonathan Frakes on the street or any of these, like anybody from The Next Generation, except Will Wheaton, as I may punch him in his face. But everybody else, I would fangirl out. And I don't want to do that, but I'm afraid I would. So probably in both.
So they're kind of like your Steve Perry. For
yes. Me. Like it's gotcha. Like, yeah, like this is my 80s just junk music.
That's good. Well, no, don't take anything away from the show because this show is awesome. Like they really kind of covered a lot of ground and did way more. And this is just me personal opinion here, but it seems like they went further, took more chances, and really fulfilled what Gene Roddenberry was trying to do with his first series. I felt like he was hamstrung a little bit
for sure.
Because of the times, right? Sure. And he maybe couldn't get across some of the messages that he was trying to, although he did an outstanding job at the time. But this one feels like they really went out there and tried to hit on some of these themes, social themes, economic themes, you name it, right? You've got 178 episodes. There's a lot of stuff in there to cover in that much content. But
I think Gene Roddenberry's dream of what society should be was fully realized in Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think what he saw the future as is fully realized in this. And so knowing that and after he passed, I think the producers and the writers did a really good job, more so on Next Generation than any of the other series, did a really good job of staying true to that vision and kind of fleshing out all of these social issues that we were going through in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And even seeing some that we're going through today. That I'm hoping we get to talk about a little bit. There's just so many different societal issues that they talk about in these episodes. And it started off very episodic. Like they had a major theme throughout the first season, which was that there were aliens who were infiltrating Starfleet Command, but there were only literally 3, maybe 4 episodes that touched on that. And then at the end of at the end of season 1, they destroyed the aliens at Starfleet Command, and that was the end of it. Season 2, as it went on, as it still dealt with all of these issues in society, they kind of started to go, let's develop these characters. And after 7 seasons, I mean, you can really dive into these characters, and some of the great characters. Brent Spiner does Lieutenant Commander Data perfectly. Like I couldn't imagine anybody else playing Data. Jonathan Frakes does just a wonderful job of playing Riker. They all really do. Even the characters that I'm kind of lukewarm on, like Geordie LaForge, LeVar Burton and his Reading Rainbow does a fantastic job of playing this guy who can't get a girl and then falls in love with a hologram. So,
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Like, there's just all
that's weird,
right? But think about what we're going.
No, I know where we are
today. Exactly. So
I get it,
there's so much that Trek as a whole kind of foresaw in society that I think that's why it still stands up today. And I've watched every episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation more than probably 7 times.
Wow. Yeah, I think I've probably I may have seen all of the episodes once at least at some point in my life. Maybe not I've never sat down and just said, you know what, we're going to spend the next 3 weeks watching these.
You really should, because you see the progression of the characters that these actors and the writers were really able to just dive into. And I've watched Next Generation with my wife at least 3 times, and all the way through from beginning to end. Data and his humanity is one of the greatest storylines in television history, as far as I'm concerned. Picard and how he deals with his humanity after being assimilated by the Borg, and that kind of foreshadows technology creeping in and taking us away from what we were and kind of evolving into what we are, and then how we deal with that. There was an episode where Riker, who's kind of like he's the Kirk of the Next Generation. He's the ladies' man. He's the swashbuckling hero, where he falls in love with an androgynous, person in this androgynous race, and she decides to become a her, and that is frowned upon in her race. So it deals with transgender and gender fluid and gender identity, and these are things in the 90s
years ago.
You never heard of. And now we're starting to deal with it today. And so just as the societal themes are mirrored or foreshadowed in Star Trek, so is technology. And I know Stargate Pioneer in your last episode touched on some of these. And so Star Trek for me has always been science fiction grounded in reality, where the other big science fiction IP, Star Wars, for me has always been science fantasy. It's science philosophy. It's science religion, where the two are, to me, are so different that it's never been an argument of which one you like better. They're just different. I can like them both. Yeah,
no, I'm with you there 100%. Like I'm obviously a huge Star Wars fan, and so do a whole show on that, but I like both of these equally, and honestly, even with my kids, I've been trying to get them to watch Star Trek more, and they really enjoy Star Trek, and they are able to distinguish the two. They don't see them as being, similar in any way. They're just very different, and because of what you said, they deal with, again, more of the social issues, the economic issues, the personal issues that we go through. And I'd go so far as to say that this really is, and I haven't watched all of them, but I've seen enough of the series outside of the new one. I haven't watched the new series. But up until then, this is probably the best one for me.
I would agree.
There's just all of they've got everything going for it. The acting, the special effects, right? We're talking 1987. And I remember when it came out, it was above and beyond what we saw on TV, even at that time.
Absolutely.
There was nothing even close to it. And going back, you look at it, still holds up. I mean, it's not perfect. But if you think about what else is on it, around 1987 on television, there was nowhere close. So they were investing heavily in the technology here, and by the late or the mid 90s, they'd come a long way, and it certainly changed, I think, what we see today in terms of like special effects on television. The characters themselves. I don't. If you had to pick one of who was your favorite character out of all of the originals?
Why? That's like picking one of my kids. I only have
we
one.
all have a favorite kid.
I only have one,
that's
so it's fine.
You got it easy.
I do. Data. Any episode that dealt with Data was fantastic. It was always well written. Brent Spiner is just an absolutely wonderful actor, and he can nail those emotions without being able to show those emotions, because he wanted to be human so badly and he couldn't.
Yeah.
And when Q in an episode, and I don't remember the name of the episode, forgive me, Q gives him, it's when Q loses his powers as Q. So he's no longer godlike, and he chooses to be human and live among the humans. Data was the only person who would interact with him because Data didn't have any emotions against him. He didn't see him as evil. He didn't see him as malevolent. He just saw him as now another human. He is what Data wanted to be. And so at the end of the episode, when Q gets his powers back, Q gives Data a gift. And that gift is the gift of laughter. The gift of understanding a joke. And just suddenly out of nowhere, Brent Spiner just starts laughing on the bridge. It's such a beautifully acted scene. And it's just like, so any Data episode, the Picard episodes are always good. The Riker episodes are always good. I hated every Will Wheaton, Wesley centered episode ever, except for the one where Ashley Judd guest starred, because Ashley Judd was amazingly hot. So I like those. I didn't care for Dr. Pulaski in season 2. Thankfully, in season 3, they brought Gates McFadden back as Dr. Crusher. But there's just so much to this. They talk about dealing with being old and dealing with death. Like when they bring in James Doohan to reprise his role as Scotty. It was just so brilliantly done. I like all of those episodes where they do that. They brought in the very first episode, Encounter at Farpoint, they brought in Bones. Bones was there. He's 100 and some years old.
Yeah. He's on screen for like, what, 30 seconds?
30 seconds, and he calls Data Vulcan.
Vulcan,
It was just great. They deal with...
Which, by the way, that particular episode is still one of my favorites. I know it's the pilot and it's supposed to be good, but Encounter at Farpoint is just great television, or great storytelling, in my opinion.
It is. But I really like how they brought it back in All Good Things, back to Encounter at Farpoint.
To wrap it all together.
So good. Just the writing is so good. If you don't want to sit and watch 7 seasons of television, which, by the way, has great guest stars like David Ogden Stiers, who in that episode, they deal with euthanasia, where this society has decided that you're too old, you must die. And everybody's okay with it. He does a great job. Famke Janssen is another guest star, who she shows up and, which is kind of weird later on because Patrick Stewart plays Professor X. Famke Janssen.
That's true.
Plays,
Phoenix. Jean Grey.
Right. So, they fall in love because she is, she's like an empath, but a super strong empath. And so she bonds with Picard and they fall in love. And that's like the great loss, is she has to make the sacrifice for her people to go off and live with this other guy, even though she's now in love with Picard. And it was that episode where they went, we need to give Picard a love interest. And so they did with Vash.
But didn't he end up like hooking up with Crusher?
No. Well, yes. So in All Good Things, they kind of allude to that. The actors, Patrick Stewart and Gates McFadden, decided that there needed to be some chemistry between the two of these characters. And so they did that because the whole backstory was or Dr. Crusher's husband died, and Patrick Stewart or Picard was his best friend. So he delivered the bad news. He kind of was helping Wesley along and what that means to become a man and have responsibility and duties and all that stuff. So they felt that would be the natural progression. The writers said, nope. And so they made an episode where the two could hear each other's thoughts, and that put the kibosh on that romance pretty quick. But in the All Good Things episode, they decided that later on it would be okay if in the future the two of them got married, but they got divorced. So
so I thought they were, maybe not. I thought they got together in the movies.
No, in the movies it was Riker and Troy, which that was always the plan. And even in the very first episode,
she was with Worf though, wasn't she?
At the end, the last season.
Right.
But that was the whole thing that then put strain between Riker and Worf, and Worf always looked up to Riker and wanted to be like Riker, and now Riker's kind of mad at Worf because he's with Troy. So it's just this great, after 7 seasons, you can do that kind of stuff. And they never really they never really explored on TV except for that first episode where Troy calls Riker Imzadi, and they have this whole telepathic connection, and they kind of talk about it throughout the series that the two used to date, but Troy's going to be free and she's going to go do her own thing. So I thought it was great in the first movie that they got married.
Yeah.
I thought that was because everybody wanted to see it.
Yeah. We've been waiting for it.
There's so much in Star Trek The Next Generation. I know we're running out of time, but the technology, I just want to touch on that, like Google Glasses, iPad, the tablets, Bluetooth communications, hands-free communication, voice-activated devices, 3D printing, the replicators, holodecks. I know that even SP touched on that. The holodecks with the VR and the things they can do with that with like the Star Wars Jedi Challenges with AR, and even the Void experience in Orlando and in Anaheim, where there's these big rooms and everything it's all VR and you're just able to interact with all these things. I mean, the holodeck is going to be a thing. We're not there yet. We'll get there. And they're even, like SP said, they're working on transporter technology. It's theoretically possible. So there's all these things that Star Trek, it's so grounded in reality that these writers have been able to kind of move forward. It's interesting to me that in Voyager, we finally saw holographic communication. And even in Discovery, Star Trek Discovery, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I've seen it. I've watched it. The holographic communication is a thing. So, Star Wars kind of saw that well before Star Trek did.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, again, like you said, a lot of this is grounded in reality, which is always cool. And so much of what we see in Star Trek feels like we're right there. Like we're on the cusp of this happening. Maybe transporter stuff has always been kind of out there, but for the most part, a lot of that other stuff is not that far away. We know it's coming. We see glimpses of it, shimmers of it now. So it's only a matter of time before we probably are going to have a lot of the same technology in our lives.
Yeah.
So.
If you want to watch really good episodes of this and you don't want to spend, weeks watching 7 seasons worth, you need to watch Encounter at Farpoint, Best of Both Worlds, Unification, which has Spock in it, which is just great. The Drumhead, The Outcast, Suddenly Human, Darmok, which is such a great episode where Picard and this alien can't understand each other because the alien speaks in analogy. And so they have to try to figure it out. The Measure of a Man, which is so great about the humanity and what it means to be human. What does it mean to be a man? Relics, Time Zero, The Naked Now, and of course, All Good Things. So those are the episodes. Those are your must-see episodes. It's such a great series. I was disappointed that Ready Player One didn't have more allusions to Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation than it did. I thought that the Enterprise would be a great vehicle to have. Like, that's what I would want, to go back and forth between these areas. I would have been wearing a Next Generation uniform.
Yeah, the one piece I mentioned
absolutely
earlier.
The one that I need that picture back.
It's the plunging V cut in the front that really just does it.
It's interesting. It's interesting. So just a couple of quick, little tidbits. There was an episode where they wanted to give Troy. They put her out of the mini skirt that she had been in for several seasons, and they put her in an actual honest to God uniform. And they went, oh wow, she looks a lot better in the uniform than she does in the mini skirt. Yeah. And so they changed that, and they started giving her more responsibility. And I'm surprised she didn't blow the ship up. That's not what her character was, but they were trying to get her there.
Just sit there and be emotional. And that's all we need to do.
Exactly. And then Patrick Stewart didn't want to do the show. Really? After the first season, he was, or maybe it was in the middle of the season. He's like, this just isn't going to work. I want out of my contract. And so they set up a meeting with him, the heads of the studio. They set up a meeting with him, and they made the director of whatever episode he was doing make it run late, so that he had to show up at the cafeteria for this meeting in full uniform. So there he is on the Paramount Studios, full uniform, walking, and it was basically the studio head saying, "We own you. You're going to do this." Because Patrick Stewart he's a classically trained actor.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was no, you're going to do this, or you don't really have a choice. And when he kind of realized that, he's like, fine, I will do with it what I can because I am an actor and the show must go on. And it's great. He just announced at Star Trek Las Vegas that there's going to be a new Picard show.
Yeah, just 3 weeks ago, as of this, August 4th, I believe, he announced that he was coming back to reprise the role of Jean-Luc Picard. Didn't really give a lot of details unless something's coming out since then about what he'd be doing.
It's going to deal with him with life after Starfleet. And obviously, I think we're going to see a lot of the same characters that we saw in The Next Generation, some new characters. Again, after 7 years of playing a character, you kind of feel like you've done everything with it. And so it's going to be interesting to see what direction they take. Is he going to be an ambassador? Is he going to be a retired, Starfleet admiral? Like what is it they're going to give him to do? Is he still going to be gallivanting around the galaxy, facing down Romulans? Is he going to be, a diplomat where he's signing peace treaties with the Romulans and the Cardassians, and are the Borg going to be back? Like, so what are all these things it's going to be interesting to see what they do with it. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of Star Trek Discovery. I do watch it. I do get some enjoyment out of it because it is Trek. I just kind of hate it when they go back and reprise things where they give you this in between stuff. I don't need that. Like the Star Trek movies, when you reboot the series, I'm okay with that because you've said it's a different universe. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is, oh, by the way, Spock had a sister. What?
Yeah. No. Where did this come from?
Like, it just doesn't make sense. Why didn't Spock ever talk about it? So
my guess is he'll be in a vineyard somewhere working.
I would hope so.
That'll be the premise of the show.
Well, in one of the movies, his nephew died in a fire. And so there was nobody to carry on the Picard line. So it'll be interesting to see if he has a son, if he's adopted a son, if, what that looks like. So, they can go a lot of different ways with it. And if Tom Hardy plays his cloned adopted son, I'm okay with that. A la Boba Fett, whatever Nemesis, Star Trek Nemesis.
Yeah, Nemesis. All right. So this is the last question and we'll end the show here on this. Of the Next Generation films, which is your favorite?
Really?
Well, come on. All right, First Contact, or is it? We're gonna talk about it now?
Yeah,
we don't want to talk about the movie. We're not gonna talk about the movie. We're out of time.
First Contact.
Is that the obvious?
That's the obvious choice. Seeing Shatner and Stewart on screen together was amazing. Even though it wasn't like the whole movie, it was just there at the end. It was still the passing of the torch, and I still say Wrath of Khan, coupled with Into Darkness, make the best. It's one of the best movies ever.
Boy, I think you're talking about Generations, though.
Oh yeah, no, Generations. That's what I meant. Generations.
Okay, so you're saying Generations is your favorite?
I like Generations more than First Contact.
Okay,
I was not.
No, First Contact's my favorite.
You know what's interesting about First Contact? I know that was the last question. Did you know that in Enterprise? Did you ever watch Star Trek Enterprise?
Yeah.
So do you remember the mirror episode?
No.
Okay, so the mirror episodes on any Star Trek it wasn't in Star Trek Next Generation, and it wasn't, but they brought it back for Enterprise, and they brought it back, and they did it in the TOS. And spoiler alert, they do it in Discovery. It's just a parallel universe where Starfleet's evil, and they have an emperor, and everybody backstabs everybody to climb up in rank. So Starfleet is an empire. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the way this all starts is they show that First Contact where the actor's name is Cromwell and he plays Cochrane, the guy who created Warp. Instead of shaking hands with the Romulan, they altered the movie, that footage from the movie, to where he shoots, or with the Vulcan, where he shakes hands with the Vulcan, he shoots the Vulcan.
Yeah, he shoots the Vulcan.
And that's how the Empire starts.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought that was neat. I wasn't a big fan of Enterprise, but I was a big fan of Jolene Blalock, and I love Bakula, so I enjoyed that. So there you go. There's the last bit of Star Trek trivia, and I'm done.
Right. So watch Generations, watch First Contact, and if you stay away from Insurrection and Nemesis, you're probably okay. All right. Well, on that note, I think we are going to end this show because if we go any longer, Mike is going to kill me. So we're
sorry, Mike.
Sorry, Mike. We're going to end it here. And looking ahead, we've got we're going to be talking Tolkien, Orson Scott Card, Douglas Adams, the A-Team. Thank goodness we'll finally get in there. We'll talk G.I. Joes, Star Blazers, Revenge of the Nerds. We've got some Tarantino films that we'll talk about, REM for music guests, and Pink Floyd as well. A whole lot of other stuff. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Before we go, Crowley, where can the fine folks find you?
Part of the Ear Glue Media family. You can find me at Bad Gamers Anonymous along with my co-host Garrick. As always, Albert, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I love going down memory lane with you. This is awesome. RPO, you're doing a great job here. Keep it up. Love it.
Hey, thank you. Checks in the mail.
Thanks.
All
man.
right. We'll end it there, and we will see you guys in, about 2 weeks. So see you. The views and opinions of the Basement hosts are of our own and are not in any way affiliated with Random House or Ernest Klein. All quotes, music, sounds, trademarked, and copyrighted material referenced in the show are owned by the respectful companies and creators and are used by the Basement as fair use for entertainment purposes only. It would take me a month to read this whole disclaimer, but sad to say, I don't have that kind of time.